After her return, Juliette's survival was unwelcome. But
There's a voice inside Silo 18 that never sleeps, never blinks, and never forgets. It talks to Camille like a colleague, it talked to Lucas like a warning. And in Season 3, it is quietly deciding whether Juliette Nichols should live or die. But here's the question almost nobody is asking correctly. This isn't a machine that woke up on its own and decided humanity needed managing. Someone built it. Someone feeds it its priorities. And whoever that someone is, they have been running the exact same calculation on 10,000 people for centuries, long before Juliette ever took her first breath of surface air. By the time you finish this, you'll understand why the algorithm doesn't hate Juliette, why it doesn't fear her the way you'd expect, and why the coldest thing about it isn't that it might kill her. It's that killing her would just be routine. So let's talk about what the algorithm actually is. Why it seems to know everything happening inside Silo 18 down to the smallest lie. Why it has marked Juliette as a liability instead of a hero. And who is really sitting behind the curtain pulling the strings. Some of this is locked-in canon straight from Hugh Howey's novels. Some of it is still theory, still smoke without confirmed fire. I'm going to tell you clearly which is which, because this story punishes viewers who mistake speculation for fact. Let's start with the biggest misconception. A lot of people watching Silo assume the algorithm is some kind of independent artificial intelligence, a machine mind that evolved its own goals the way you'd expect from a science fiction thriller about AI turning against its creators. That is not what's happening here, and honestly, that's what makes it scarier. The algorithm is a tool. It was built with intention by human beings for a very specific purpose, and it still answers to human hands. The entire Silo project was never just Silo 18 sitting alone underground. There are 50 silos total, and all of them are managed from a command center called Silo 1. Silo 1 doesn't have a normal generational population like the others. Instead, its inhabitants cycle through cryogenic sleep, waking up in rotating shifts that last around 6 months at a time, century after century, to babysit the other 49 silos from a distance. Congressman Donald Keene was one of those people. So were figures named Thurman, Erskine, and Victor, the architects who set the whole system in motion. That's the piece that reframes everything. The algorithm isn't the authority. It's the megaphone and the surveillance system for an authority that has existed since before Silo 18's first generation was even born. Whoever is currently awake and on shift in Silo 1 is the one actually pulling the levers. The algorithm just executes the policy. Now here's where it gets genuinely disturbing, because once you understand what the algorithm was designed to do, its behavior in Season 3 stops looking mysterious and starts looking horrifyingly procedural. This system was never built just to answer questions or manage logistics. It was built to make life and death decisions about entire populations, over and over, for generations. When a silo experiences unrest, there's an established playbook. First comes suppression through medication, quietly editing what people remember so the unrest never crystallizes into full rebellion. If that fails and a rebellion spirals out of control, if a population manages to overwhelm its own IT department or seize control of the airlock, the response escalates to outright extermination, triggered remotely by whoever is watching from Silo 1. This isn't theoretical, it has happened before. History inside this universe includes a cluster of 11 silos that severed contact and tried to jam the kill signal, and Silo 1's answer to that defiance was to destroy them, rather than risk losing control of the wider experiment. So when the algorithm calmly tells Camille that outliers who don't respond to the memory protocol have historically been removed from the equation, that isn't a bluff, and it isn't dramatic flourish for the sake of tension. It's the system stating its own operating history out loud. This has happened before. It will happen again. Juliette just happens to be the current name on the file. This also answers the question of why the algorithm seems to know absolutely everything. It isn't psychic, and it isn't magically all-seeing in some undefined sci-fi way. It knows because the entire system was engineered around total information control from the very beginning. Every silo's population has been tracked, medicated, monitored, and quietly reset whenever the founders decided the population had drifted too far from the intended narrative. The algorithm has centuries of behavioral data on how uprisings start, how they spread, and how they're neutralized. When it looks at Juliette, it isn't guessing. It's running the same models it has run on every dangerous outlier before her. Models built from real, repeated history, rather than paranoid speculation. And that brings us to the real emotional core of this mystery. Why does the algorithm want Juliette dead specifically? because on paper, she's useful to them right now. She's popular. She's calming a population that just lived through a violent uprising. Removing a beloved public figure carries its own risk of triggering exactly the chaos the algorithm is trying to prevent. So why would a system built around careful population management even consider killing its own stabilizing force? The answer is the terrifying elegance of the whole thing. The algorithm isn't measuring Juliette's popularity against nothing, it's measuring her popularity against her memory. As long as her mind stays foggy, as long as she genuinely believes she recovered from her cleaning by hiding out in some hut, she's an asset. She's a symbol Judicial can point to and say, look, the system still works, even our most rebellious engineer came home and settled into order. But the moment real memory starts breaking through that fog, the moment she remembers Silo 17, remembers the helmet that doesn't match her own silo's markings, remembers the person who helped her when she should have died out there, she stops being a symbol of stability and becomes a walking indictment of everything Judicial has told the population. The show even visualizes this literally, with the algorithm describing two lines on a graph, one representing the calming effect of her leadership, the other representing the risk posed by her recovering memory. The moment those two lines cross, in the algorithm's own cold language, she may need to be removed from the equation. That phrase is doing a lot of work. Removed from the equation. Not punished, not silenced. Removed the way you delete a variable that's throwing off a formula. That's the whole philosophy of this system laid bare in one sentence. Human beings are inputs to be balanced, not individuals to be reasoned with. And this is exactly why the parallel storyline in the Before Time section of Season 3 matters so much, because it shows you the exact same philosophy being born, decades before Silo 18 even exists. Victor's treatment of Charlotte Keene isn't just a side plot about a traumatized pilot slowly regaining her memory. It's the prototype. Victor genuinely frames his method as compassion, telling Daniel that suppressing Charlotte's memory of the Iran mission protects her from a trauma that could break her mind completely. It sounds humane on the surface. But strip away the medical language, and you're left with a government-adjacent figure deciding, unilaterally, which memories a person is allowed to keep, based on what's convenient for the people around her rather than what she actually wants. Charlotte isn't just a patient in that framing. She's a witness to something involving nanotechnology and a bombing run that doesn't add up, and witnesses who forget stop being threats. Helen Drew figures this out almost immediately once she starts asking sharper questions, because the official story surrounding Charlotte's mission has too many convenient gaps, the kind of gaps that don't happen by accident. So when you watch the algorithm calculate whether Juliette's usefulness has been outweighed by her danger, you're not just watching a cold machine make a cold decision. You're watching the philosophical grandchild of Victor's clinic, scaled up from one patient to an entire underground civilization. Memory control was never really about protecting people from pain. It was always about protecting the people in power from being remembered accurately. Now let's get to the part everyone actually wants answered. Who is behind the algorithm right now? Who is the person or people actually deciding Juliette's fate? Here's what's confirmed. The founding conspiracy behind the entire Silo project traces back to Thurman, Erskine, and Victor, the architects who convinced each other that destroying the surface world and controlling humanity's survivors underground was the only way to stop uncontrolled, weaponized nanotechnology from wiping out civilization entirely. Congressman Donald Keene was pulled into that plan under false pretenses, believing he was designing a nuclear waste storage facility, only to discover far too late that he'd built the framework for humanity's underground prison. Silo 1 is where key personnel from that founding group and their successors take shifts across centuries managing the entire operation, including whatever policy the algorithm currently enforces. So structurally, the honest answer is that the algorithm is controlled by whoever is currently awake and on duty in Silo 1, operating within a framework laid down generations ago by that original triumvirate. But there's a second layer to this question that the show has deliberately left unresolved, and I want to be upfront that this next part is theory, not confirmed fact. A number of viewers watching this season have noticed something strange about the algorithm's voice. Back in Season 2, when Lucas first encountered it, the voice carried a colder, more robotic cadence, distinctly machine-like. This season, that same voice sounds noticeably warmer, more conversational, more human. That shift has fueled a theory that the algorithm might not be a machine intelligence at all in the way we assume, but rather a person, possibly even Daniel Keene himself from the Before Time storyline, using the algorithm's identity as a mask to manipulate the silo from behind the scenes. It's a tantalizing idea, especially given the centuries-long time gap between Daniel's storyline and the present day. Whether that means his consciousness or voice was somehow preserved, recorded, or recreated using the same technology the founders exploited for cryogenic stasis, the show has not confirmed. The algorithm's voice remains officially uncredited, which means as of right now there is no verified answer either way. It's one of the most compelling open questions the show has planted, but it is still speculation, not revealed truth. What we do know for certain is the machinery of intent. This isn't rebellion being crushed by cold circuitry making decisions in a vacuum. It's rebellion being crushed by human choices, made by people who convinced themselves centuries ago that controlling memory and controlling death were acceptable prices for controlling chaos. The algorithm is simply the tool they built to make that control efficient, patient, and repeatable across generations. Which raises the question I think is really worth sitting with. If a system like this can convince itself that killing a person is simply removing them from an equation, what does it say about anyone willing to build that system in the first place? Is the real villain of Silo the machine speaking through the walls, or is it the human beings who decided that a machine like this was the responsible way to manage a civilization? Here's the thought I want to leave you with. Juliette has never really been dangerous because of what she can do with her hands. Whether that's fixing pipes or defying judicial. She's dangerous because of what she remembers, and memory has always been the one thing this system was never fully able to erase, no matter how many resets it performs or how many pills it slips into someone's food. Every previous attempt at controlling memory across this world's history has eventually failed, and there's no real reason to believe this one succeeds either. The algorithm can draw all the graphs it wants. It cannot draw a line around the truth forever. So tell me what you think in the comments. Do you believe the algorithm's voice really does belong to someone like Daniel Keene, reaching across centuries? Or do you think it's simply the same cold machine, endlessly recycled through whichever hands happen to be awake in Silo 1 at the time? If you enjoyed this breakdown, drop a like, subscribe for more Silo analysis as the season continues, and share this with someone who's still catching up on the Mystery Underground.